What's happening, party people? Having some technical difficulties there for a second. I couldn't get us on the live. The screen was black, but we are here now. Oscar, can you hear me? I can't hear you. Are you there?
How about that? Can you hear me?
Ah, yes.
There we go. Technology at its finest, right?
Absolutely. So, how are you doing?
I'm great. How about
on
yourself?
This Friday? Good Friday of Fridays. Yeah, I don't think a live podcast or anything that's live cannot. You got to have some kind of glitches or something in there at some point.
It can never go exactly according to plan, right? That would just be too easy.
Too easy. Exactly, it's too easy. Yeah.
Right.
All right, brother. So I want to bring you on here. We've talked obviously, but I want to talk to you and I want to share with people your story, because I believe that a lot of people can get some value, get some inspiration, motivation about your journey, what you've done. But before we get into that, the super ultra runner that you are, before we get into that, let's get a little backstory on you, who you are, the man, the myth, the legend, behind the scenes, behind the curtain. What do you do? What's your background? Where you come from? Just start, just drop it and we'll go from there.
Yeah, absolutely. So as you can see on my name's Oscar Gomez. I was born originally in Leon, Nicaragua in the early 1980s, which, as you can imagine, in the early 1980s was just what a time down in Nicaragua, right? There was basically a civil war that broke out. And so my parents, immigrated here from there to effectively do the American dream. I mean, I am a product of what people call the American dream. I'm a CPA now. I've got a consulting firm, as you can see in the background there. I'm a senior vice president for a software company. Own mountain cabin rentals up in North Georgia. So just have really just expanded kind of all that I'm doing from the finance business side. Went to undergrad, Georgia State University, got a master's degree from Kennesaw State University in accountancy, and just living full time, man.
Yeah.
There's no days off. I've got two beautiful children. I've got a wife who's a doctor, and she very proud of her. She works at the Wellstar Group, which any doctor, medical professional, I mean, you just got to tip your hat to those guys. They've had quite an 18 months, and it doesn't seem like it's ending.
Yeah. So. Yeah, actually, yeah, definitely. So you, my hat's off to you, because, the finance world, man, it's really, really important, but that's not it bores me.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh my God, numbers. I can't do numbers.
Yeah. I've got a shirt that my wife got for me and a mug, and both of them say stuff that's similar, but the shirt says any of life's challenges can all be solved with an Excel spreadsheet. And I feel that. I mean, I feel that in my soul.
Yeah, that's really cool. So what is your athletic background?
So I starting probably from the age of 10 to about 15, I did martial arts. I got a black belt in American sport karate and a black belt in Ed Parker Kempo.
Cool. Yeah.
Let's see. I ran cross country in high school and ran track and field. So for me, running has always been one of these things that I have kind of used to escape sort of my, whatever's going on in my life. I've generally speaking have used running to try and escape.
Right.
Though here recently, running is like golf, right? Or like any other sport. If you don't do it for an extended period of time, you just casually will start losing skill, and eventually you'll have to start from basically the beginning again.
Right. And as you get older, running, it's different when it comes to, like you said, like golf or tennis or martial arts, or any sport. There's skill involved. You know, running is one of those skills, one of those things, one of those activities, one of those events where you don't really have, you just get, you know, people think that you just grab some shoes and you just go out for a run because there's not a lot of equipment involved, but there really is. I mean, you really have to learn. And as you get older, your technique, your body physiology changes, the things change. I mean, you've got aches and pains. You've got to change up your stride, change up your gait, and those kind of things. If you're not honing those in, those can cause you a lot of problems. Maybe not on a 5K, or, you know, if you're going to go out and run a mile or two every week or something like that. But when you're getting into the longer distance running and it's repetitive and repeating and the pounding on the body, you got to have that pretty much dialed in. So obviously you're not, you know, we were talking about that you were in, you know, track and field and cross country where you were running in high school. Mm-hmm. I mean, I'm just going to go ahead and throw this out there. I'm going to throw you under the bus and me under the bus. I mean, we're obviously not spring chickens right out of high school or college anymore. So what has changed? I don't want to get into why you decided to do what you did yet, but when you started running again, what has changed? Because obviously there's been a gap in time from competing and then now getting back into competition. So what did you feel was the biggest challenge from where you were to where you are now, and then starting back and getting going again?
Yeah, no, great question, right? So I think mentally, right, as an athlete and as somebody that has just grown up running and running competitively, right?
Yeah.
In your mind, I think in the back of your mind, you think, I'm the same guy, right?
Yep.
But physically, you just aren't anymore. You're not the guy running 15, 16-minute 5Ks anymore. You're the guy that is, you know, middle-aged, joint issues, pain, shoulder issues. You know, I'm significantly heavier than I was in high school. And so mentally, you think you can go out and you can do all of the things that you can do. And you know, the running form, right, is you know, second nature to me now, but it just changes, right? Your stride, you brought it up, right? Gait and stride. You just got to be more in the moment as you're running, as opposed to maybe when I was younger, I could throw on a pair of shoes and just go casually run. Now it requires a significant amount of stretching. It requires, you know, some lead up time to the run.
Right.
Whereas before I just didn't need to do that. And so just being able to focus on, you know, how does my body feel today? How far am I going to need to run today? And just making sure that I have the lead up that's appropriate for that distance.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that's a big thing. It's not that you can't go and run or that you're too old to run, but it's about training smarter and not harder. And you can get to, I mean, you might not be running a 15-minute 10K anymore, like you said, but you can run efficiently. You can be competitive at your age without injuring, without getting hurt. You can't train like we did when we were in our teenage years, our college years. But if you train smart for who you are now and what your body is and your lifestyle is, then you can become competitive, and you can actually, you know, be, you know, really competitive in place, as long as you have that idea and that dialed in. So when so what was the moment? I mean, running a 5K, you know, you can say, oh, you see it on TV or something, or you're going to do a charity run. You're like, yeah, I'm going to go run a 5K, but you didn't do that. What was the domino that fell? What was the rock that you looked under? What inspired you? What was the aha where you said, you know what, fuck it, I'm just going to go run an ultramarathon? I mean, I don't, you know, you and I are a lot alike, right? I mean, we're mentally different than a lot of people, you know, and we're cut from the same cloth, but it's a very different cloth than a lot of people. I mean, we are, you know, high performance athletes, and we were brought up a certain way with a certain skill set, certain mentality, certain mindset. But what was the thing? What was that moment? Because when you told me that you wanted to do this, I honestly thought you were crazy. So what was it? I'm
not entirely convinced that I'm not crazy. I think the jury's still out on that, and maybe a midlife crisis is probably the way to characterize it. But no, so in all actuality, right, I woke up one October morning, and I'll never forget it, right? It was drizzling outside, but it was one of these things where I went to the bathroom and I almost didn't recognize the person I was, right? I was the heaviest that I had ever been in my entire life.
Yep.
I stepped on the scale and just couldn't believe it, right? I had tipped the scales at like 205, 207, something like that. And I had always stayed within a relative range. And it has changed, right? In my life, again, right, to describe my life and say that I have extra time is just not a good characterization of my lifestyle, right? Everything is always jam-packed, and kind of I'm a master of time management, but I had neglected my fitness for so long. And so I just said, you know what? I'm going to prove to myself that I still got it. I'm going to go run 4 miles. And I woke up, got my stuff on, went outside, cold, drizzling, dressed probably not even appropriate for what the conditions outside. And I went and ran 4 miles, and Nathan, it felt like 400. I mean, I just felt horrible, and normally when I got done running, I felt kind of this sense of energized, sort of renewed vision of what I was going to do that day. Yeah. And it was everything to get through that 4 miles. And I remember sitting on the stairs of my house and just kind of looking up and just saying, I gotta do something. I gotta make a change, because, I'm not going to make it to 50 if I continue to do this and continue to neglect my fitness. And I literally went inside. My wife, as great as she is, the kids were already up, and I told her today was my first day of training for an ultramarathon. And she said, "What?" And I said, "Yeah, today's day 1 of my ultra life. I'm going to train for an ultramarathon." And she said, "Which one?" And I said, "I have no idea, but today is day 1 of that training."
Yeah.
And she in good psychological, she's a trained psychologist, right? So in good form, she starts asking me questions and asking me how I feel about things to try and assess, like, did you just have like a mental break? Like, what's going on here? And so she said, you haven't even ran a marathon ever. Like, and you're going to run an ultra? Like, isn't an ultra longer than a marathon? And I said, oh, yeah. It's, 30 some odd miles. And she said, huh? Like, it was something like, but in my mind, I had already convinced myself that this is something I needed to do, right? Trying to train for a 5K or 10K wasn't impossible enough for me to make the change, to make the shift mentally in my mind. I had to take a massive action, and this was it.
Yeah. So okay, now this may not be something that you can articulate on, but you wake up in the morning, you run 4 miles, you feel like shit, you feel like trash, and you're like, okay, I'm gonna go run an ultra. That's not most people's go-to. It's, I need to clean up my act, I need to maybe hire a personal trainer, I need to lose some weight and do some stuff. And Rebecca, being the psychologist that she is, she's probably like, okay, here comes the Corvette, and there's going to be a blonde on the side or some crap like that, right? But nope, none of the typical midlife crisis shit. It was basically you going, I'm going to run an ultra. So why? And I know this. I know the answer to this because I'm the same way. But why, for people out there, I want to hear it from you. Why not the typical, I'm going to get a fitness program, or I'm going to go to the gym, or I'm going to do that? Why was it such an extreme goal for you? Why did you have to pick such an extreme goal?
Yeah, because to me, the extremeness of the goal, right, standing in that bathroom right then and there, that it was impossible, right? So if you'd have told me and put a gun to my head and said, you're going to go run this damn ultra right now, it would have been absolutely impossible for me to have achieved that, right? I had to put together an entire vision, an entire set of goals to achieve this dream of wanting to run an ultra marathon. And so for me, it just wouldn't have been simple enough, or it wouldn't have been impossible enough for me to have said, I just need to clean up my act or to do, these small steps. It just would have led back to, the laziness of, okay, I'll just get to it tomorrow, or to get to it the day after. It had to be an impossible thing that I had to then turn around and try and achieve. It was just not, it wasn't big enough for me to say, I'm just going to get on a diet or I'm just going to lose some weight. All of that would have been achieved by doing the ultra, right? So I was going to knock all of those things out all at the exact same time.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's a lot to kind of dissect from that, like you said, the goal has to be big, hairy, audacious. It's got to be it's got to have a slight air of unrealistic to it, because it's not and like you said, if I accomplish this goal, I will get everything that I want. And that was for the thing is like, okay, so you didn't think about the weight loss. You didn't think about cleaning up your act. You didn't think, because that was all the process and all the steps along the way that you were going to need to do in order to accomplish the goal. So that's a very big key takeaway, because a lot of people say, well, I just want to lose weight, but it's not big enough. They can't even stick to a diet or commit to something for 3 or 4 days. So it's like, okay, stop thinking about the weight loss. Stop thinking about that stuff that's just not good enough. Think about something else. Put the goal or the expectation on something else, and have the weight loss, the energy, the feeling better, getting your health back as part of the process of getting to where you want to go. So, all right, but still could have been a marathon. You could have said, hey, I haven't done a marathon because my wife told me, she's like, you didn't even do a marathon. So why not a marathon? Why an ultra? Why for you? And this is because you're a runner. You like to run. That's your thing. That's your bread and butter. But why an ultra? What was it? Was it because it was a step more than, a lot of people run marathons, but not everybody's an ultra runner?
That's exactly it. It was, I know very, very few. So when you think about like the sphere of your friends, right? Like everyone knows someone that has accomplished something, right? And so like, and that sphere just gets smaller to what I would call a bullseye, right? And so I know friends that have done 5Ks, right? Everyone does. Everyone I feel like has at one point or another either considered a 5K, walked a 5K, done a 5K, right? Or a 10K, right? The Peachtree Road Race is a perfect example of that. You walk around, you see everyone with the t-shirt, right? If you run the Peachtree, you've ran a 10K. Half marathons, I've done them in my lifetime. But and again, right, marathons, everyone's seen the Vans with the 26.2 sticker on it. I know very few people that have been able to do an ultra,
right?
And for me, that was what I needed. I needed to chart this path that not a lot of people have walked in order for me to be feeling motivated to want to achieve all of these goals, right? Because there's all these many goals that will get achieved by doing this ultra. And so for me, I don't know very many people that have done one. And I know for sure the race that I ran, I know no one that's done that one.
Yeah.
Just because of how crazy the race sounds. I mean, I describe, and I'm sure we'll get to this a little later on, but you describe the ultra that I did, and people just kind of look at you side-eyed, like, what? You're going to run that?
Yeah. And then like you said, and we're going to go, I want to go from the beginning all the way to race day, but to jump ahead to race day, when you and I showed up there are some crazy looking people there. And I don't mean that in a mean way. These folks are serious, but there are you've taken it to a completely different level. These are not 5K people. These are people that are a friend of mine, because I race triathlon. A friend of mine says that triathletes, multi-sport athletes, people that do longer events, they have screws loose. These people had screws loose. I mean, literally, and I mean that in a positive way. I mean that in a not a condescending or lower way, but these people are not. There's some strange birds out there that are really just like dialed in. As we were talking to people, I was like, man, these are not typical people. These people are on a completely different level when it comes to running. And they were serious about it too. Very friendly, very fun, but very serious about what they were doing.
Yeah. extreme. I would say that they were extremely committed, and
Yes.
you know,
Commitment.
some of them probably looked like they needed to be committed. Right?
Yeah.
It was an incredible community of people.
Right. Yes. Community. Definitely.
It was just it was an impressive thing to see, no doubt.
Yeah. It was cool, man. It was awesome. All right. So we've gotten day one of the ultra. You run 4 miles. You're going to die. You tell Rebecca, okay, I'm going to do this. So what was the next steps? What was the initial process of the first month or two of you doing this? Because you were posting on Facebook every day about completing, the different things and kind of holding yourself accountable. It's kind of like a public journal of your process from day one up into the race. So
Yeah.
what were the first couple steps that you had to do and that you put together to start on this journey?
Yeah. So the first thing that I had to do was I knew I had to reestablish myself, cardiovascularly. Right. I knew
Right.
that I couldn't I wasn't even ready to start training for an ultra, much less, do one. And so I knew I had to put together a cardio base. Right. And so Facebook became my accountability partner.
Gotcha.
Right.
Yep.
And so I would literally write out what I was going to do that day, or what I did do that day. I always posted after I was done with that day.
Yep.
And I posted what I was going to do the next day.
Yeah.
And sometimes I would post 2 or 3 days in advance. And what I discovered, Nathan, was on the days that I didn't want to go run, I always remembered that I had already posted what I was going to do. And so for me, it was almost going to be a public embarrassment for me not to go and run, or not to go and do what I said I was going to do.
Right.
And I had people that were private messaging me asking, why am I doing this?
Yep.
How am I going about training for it? And it was one of these things where I had kind of in my mind all of the steps I needed to do, even though I didn't have all the fully formed plan to how I was going to run this ultra.
Yeah.
And so I just casually would start doing, and I knew I couldn't run every single day.
Right.
And so I would run 2 days, casually, 3, 4, 5, 6 miles every 2 days. And then I would get on the bike for a day, and I would bike 12 miles. And then it became this thing where I had to compete with myself on, I biked 12 miles in 46 minutes. Can I do 45:50? Can I do 45:40? And I would document all of these sort of mini achievements as I was kind of going through it. And so what I discovered was like, wow, I'm actually starting to get more cardiovascularly fit.
Right.
I can now start actually thinking about doing a full-on ultra marathon training. But it got to a point to where I knew I needed some help, right? Yeah. I needed kind of a team around me to start trying to help. And that's, I think that's when I called you and I said, hey, this is the goal. This is what I'm doing. I'm, maybe 5 to 6 weeks and have really gotten myself cardio ready.
Yeah.
What do I need to do?
Right. Help.
Basically like, hey, I've got this running plan and I think I've got it figured out, but I'm going to need some help.
Yeah. So so going through it, obviously every day was not ideal. There were peaks, there were valleys, there were days when you were like, man, I feel like I can just crush everything. And then there were days like, because everybody's thinking, oh, well, that's just too hard for me. And, or, you accomplished your goal and you got to where you wanted to go. People think, they forget about all of the trials and tribulations that happened up into that. You have a wife, you have kids, you have a business, you have rental property. You have multiple businesses. And you work full time, and you balanced all of that in with your training. So what did you have to do? Because people say, well, I don't have enough time to work out. They don't have enough time to just get to the gym for 30 minutes. So how the hell did Oscar accomplish all of this? So what did you do? What was your daily schedule? Like a typical day for you training and doing everything else in life?
Yeah, absolutely. So, and we'll talk more about what it takes to actually train for an ultra and the time commitment of it.
Yeah.
But what I discovered was I have all of the time in the world if I would just get up earlier. And so that's what I started doing. I had to get up early for one, right? During the summer months, like now, like you got to get up early just to be able to do it and not put yourself at risk of serious, and I'm talking serious injury. It was 106 degrees yesterday.
Yeah.
And so I would typically wake up around 4 a.m., knock out, all of the stretching and everything that I needed to. I was on the road by 4:30, 4:45. I
Right.
would knock out whatever training I had to do that day. And then I would come home and be available to get the kids ready to go to school, get myself showered, get dressed, go to work, come back home. And all of it had to do with just extreme time management.
Right.
And there were days that I would wake up, my alarm would go off, and I just would think, how in the world am I going to get through this? I've got to do, the schedule calls for me to do 8. And I don't even feel like I can do 3.
Yeah.
But those were the days that I think really defined my training. It wasn't the days where I had to go run 3, 4, 5 hours. It was the days where I knew I had 8 and I didn't even feel like I had the energy to run 1. And when
you
I
did
got
it anyway.
Yeah, and I got out there and I just, I think Tim Grover in his book Relentless really talks about this concept of don't think, just go and do it. And it was the thinking that was getting me all tripped up. It was, thinking about having to go run. Well, I didn't have to think about it. I knew what I needed to do. So I just went out there and did it. And what I also discovered is as I got through the runs,
right,
like each mile, I would get stronger. It was like, David Goggins talks about, pulling mediocrity kind of in the mud.
Yeah.
And that is about as true words that have ever been spoken, right? You just try to trick your mind into thinking you're just going to go run 1 or 2. And by the time you're in 2, your body's already saying, I'm ready. Let's just knock out the 8. And
right.
And I had to do that. But the first 2 miles of every run were always difficult. There was never a time that I would just spring out of bed and say, all right, guys, let's go run. It's 4 a.m. Let's do this.
I got 14 miles to run today. Woo woo.
Yeah. I mean, I will tell you, there were some runs that I did like in the mountains. I went and spent some time at one of the cabins and I'll never forget one of the runs I did 6 miles through the mountains. And it was the most surreal feeling because I felt great. I mean, I felt amazing.
Yeah.
And just being out there, I was like, really visualizing what it was going to be like to run an ultra. And that was a cool 6 mile run. It was through the mountains, so it was hilly as hell, but
yeah. That's the downside, but it's completely different than running here, in the city and whatnot.
Yeah.
So what was one of the, because there were a couple, but what was like one of the times where was one of the times that was like the most hardest, the most struggle, where you maybe even had some self-doubt that you had to work through and say, hey, you know what, I got to, maybe there's a point where you ran from, what was the day you started? What was the date?
So it was October 17th.
So October 17th, you raced on July 4th. So that's a long time to train and have one specific goal. Like I said, most people can't even do 5 days in a row, let alone, a half a year. So what were like some of the times where you didn't see progress real big? It was small little things that you'd see, or you didn't see any progress at all. And you were like, why am I doing this? Did that ever come to you? What were some of the challenges? What were some of the hard moments where you had to like dig down and find some mental toughness and say, dude, you got to keep going because we're not done yet. You committed to this. You're not done. What was one of those moments where you had to break through?
Yeah, there were several, right? There were several runs that were just incredibly difficult. I remember when I got my second COVID vaccine and, the side effects of those things were pretty gnarly, right? Like body aches and all of that. And I had to go out and run 13 miles. So here we are, right? I have only ever competitively ran a half marathon. That was my longest distance.
Yeah.
And now I have to go run a half marathon with just extreme body aches. Yeah. And I just thought to myself, okay, this is another day to basically prove some mental toughness, to get out here and do things that I don't want to do. I had to force myself to go out there and do days that I didn't want to do. I didn't want to be out there, but I had to. I knew that the goal and the vision of what we were trying to achieve was bigger than myself, right? And I knew I needed to get out there and actually do it.
Yeah.
And so that was certainly a very, very tough day. There was another day that I knew I had to run. I think it was my first time that I was going to run a marathon, and it was I had to run 27. So my schedule went from 24 to 27, like in a 1 week span.
Yeah.
At one point, and so I was like, man, I'm gonna knock out not only having ran a marathon, but I'm actually going to do an ultra all in the same day.
Yeah.
How am I going to do this? And so putting together my nutrition for what I was going to eat while I was running, and, you know, my hydration pack and all of that. And I went and ran at Etowah Park, which if you've ever ran there, you know, it's not a big park. I mean, it's 4 mile loop, maybe.
Yeah.
If you do all of the ins and outs. And so I knew I had to run 6, 7, 8 laps of this stuff, like, and just the monotony of it. But that was also part of the mental toughness piece, was just getting out there and knowing I had to run 7 laps at this park and knowing it's going to suck. But, you know, again, just because it was hard was not an excuse for me to go out and run. There was another day where it was pouring rain. It was raining sideways. I mean, the wind was howling. It was freezing cold. This was like in December, maybe.
Yeah.
Raining, ice cold rain. Had to go out and I had to run 6. And I just said, you know, and my mind was telling me, well, maybe the rain will let up later. And I would have to tell myself, like, and what happens if it doesn't? Because we can't skip days. Like, there were no days off. There was no days where you could just skip.
Right.
And so I went and ran, and I remember I got done running, and my wife was leaving with the kids to go to school. And I was walking inside, and there were icicles like on the bottom of my sweats that I wore. There were I was dragging ice coming into the house. And my wife was like, "You are insane." And yeah, I know. I feel like I'm getting there, but I still got it done. And I would post on Facebook. I would take my selfie.
Yeah.
I would always say, on to tomorrow, right? I earned my freedom for the day. I got through what I needed to get through. And, you know, it sounds very cliche, but it's like, if you accomplish something that significant at the very beginning of your day,
right?
I mean, you're just going to crush work.
What else? What else? Nothing can hold you down.
No, absolutely not. You already did the hardest thing you're going to do that day. Everything else is pretty easy, right? So like meetings, I was probably the annoying guy at the office. You know, people would casually come in and hide behind their cup of coffee.
Yeah.
And I would go in like guns blazing, like, because I was already in a peak state. I had already accomplished something that no one in that office probably had done. I'd ran in freezing rain.
Yeah.
So
that's awesome.
Yeah.
So, and we kind of kept you, and you and I talked about this. This was kind of a you and me thing. It wasn't just one of us or whatever, but we tried to keep you isolated. I think the mental part, but were there any friends or people that just thought you were just fucking crazy and that you need to stop? And I mean, was there any negative naysayers, the negative Nancys out there, for whatever reason, just saying you need to not do this, you're stupid or whatever?
There were a couple of folks that, you know, I told them what I was going to do, and then I described the race to them, and they said, that's impossible. Like, nobody can do that. What you're doing is you're going out and you're going to run something that, one, you've never done before, and 2, you won't be able to do, because mentally it's too much. And, I would describe it, and they would always like kind of casually be like, "Oh, that's really interesting. That's really cool. How are you doing this?" You know, and I would tell them what I was doing, and they're like, "You're not going to be able to do this."
Yeah.
And just because somebody says that doesn't have to become your reality, right? Like you are the master of your life, right? And that really is true for finance, faith, fitness, all of that. Like, you are the master of what you can and cannot do, right?
Yeah.
And so for somebody to tell you you can't do something, that just was very motivating to me. That was I thought about this particular individual when I was running the race.
Yeah.
And there you go.
Yeah. Use it as fire. Use it as fuel. Don't use it as discouragement, because, I mean, have they done it? Have they done anything, significant? And that's the kind of things. I mean, some people have your best interest in mind. They just have a really shitty way of presenting it to you. But other people, they don't want to see you go up, because that means that they can't stay mediocre, because you're going to expose their mediocrity. But it's really not even about them. That's a selfish thing. It's not about them. It's about you. And they should support you in what you want to do. So, that's the kind of thing that I did. Anybody, growing up the way I grew up, I was always trying to prove myself, right? I was bullied in school, and I'm always trying to outdo people, because I'm like, fuck you. You don't think I can do this? I'll show you that I can do this.
Yeah.
And then just drop the bombs and the mics every time, because I'm like, see, I proved you wrong again. So, I mean, there's a positive way of saying that, a negative way of living that way, but it's always pushed me to be better, always pushed me to keep going and doing it. And it looks like that's what kind of fuels you too, is that oh, you want, okay, I'll show you.
Yeah, I mean, people like to project. I think it's very obvious that people like to project their insecurities on other people, right? And so, just because something is impossible to them, they want to say, just because it's impossible to me, it's not possible for anyone to do.
Right? Yeah, exactly.
And projecting that sort of insecurity, I kind of pick up on that.
Yeah,
and it fuels me, because I'm like, you're right. It is impossible for you, but it isn't for me.
Right.
Exactly. And it really wouldn't have to be impossible for you if you would just change your mindset, right? Like, It isn't one of these things where you say, I don't know how to do this. It's flipping the question and saying, how can I achieve this?
Right.
Right.
What do I need to do to get this done?
Yeah. It's similarly in finance, right? Like, I can't afford that. Instead of saying that, say, how can I afford that? And just doing that mental shift is all the difference in the world.
Yeah, exactly. And it translates. The things that you learn in mental toughness as athletes transfers over to other parts of your life. That's why a lot of athletes become very successful in business and other parts of their lives, because they're still using the same mental toughness techniques and tactics that they use to be successful in athletics, and it transfers over. So it's like you like you said, with your finance, your fitness, and what was the other one? Faith. You could add, since relationships is an R, and you got 3 F's going, like a friendship. You'd have those 4 pillars, those 4 F's of your life, and they all balance out based on the same skill set that you're learning from one. So if you're good at one, you can be good at all of them.
Yeah. So they're all very slow processes, right? Like friends, family, finance, fitness, but they can all change in one day, right? Like you can switch your mindset in one day and really right the course of whatever ship you're on.
Yeah.
Just by having the right steps. And you just need to make sure that you're not 1 degree off in a long journey, because you're going to end up at a completely different place.
Yeah. All right. So we have gone through lots and lots of training. Race day is here. Race week is here. When you got to the race, what were you thinking?
Holy shit. We're here. This is it, right?
I had butterflies, dude. I was so excited. I was so pumped. I was so amped. I was like, oh, this shit's about to go down.
Yeah, it really is. So the race day shows up and we get, and so just to describe to the listeners what this race is, right? So the race is Merrill's Mile, and it is at Camp Merrill, which is the 7th or 6th Ranger Battalion base.
Yeah.
Out in Dahlonega, Georgia, right? And so you are doing this race on a military installation out in the middle of nowhere, right? And this is where the Army Rangers all go through, right? This is one of the 3 schools of Army Ranger training. And so here I am on this hollowed ground of just pure badasses.
Yeah.
Walking in here like, oh my gosh, right? And so the race itself kind of set up, and you go through the military base, and then you go down this hill and you cross over this bridge, and it's like there's an arena basically. I mean, and so it's a 1 mile paved loop, and I know I have to run this thing for 6 hours in the middle of the night, right? The race starts at 9 p.m. It ends at 3 a.m. and I'm going to run for 6 hours in a 1 mile paved loop. Right?
Without stopping.
And And knowing that I'm going in here and I'm running with these guys, these are not guys that you're going to go in and all of a sudden just decide I'm going to run this race. I mean, these guys have been training for this just like I have.
Yeah.
Right. And it set itself up. And I remember putting all of my stuff down and seeing you and seeing you out there, I think was all the difference in the world for me mentally. Right. Because it was, even though it was an unfamiliar area, here's a familiar face. This is the guy that I've been kind of confiding in and training with and helping me kind of refocus my mindset on achieving this impossible thing, who's been on me about my nutrition and my water intake. And, I really looked at you as kind of the crew chief of this whole thing. And
the Sherpa.
Yeah. The Sherpa that's going to lead me through this incredible journey through hell. Cause it was going to become hell very quickly.
Yep.
And so, that was it. Race day was what I had expected, but I was glad that I had done the mental toughness days because I had to get out there and I had to do it. And there was a part of me still in my mind that said, I've never done this before. How is this all going to go?
Right.
I had to just stop thinking because at that point, it's whatever is going to happen is going to happen. It's too late to turn around. So get in the right mental health space and let's get this thing done.
Yeah. So when you lined up at the starting line and the guy counted down to the start of it, was there anything going through your mind? What was the last, was that what was going through your mind was, how am I going to get this? Or you were already in the zone? What was the thing as he was counting down? Cause I think he counted down from 10 or 5 and then, go. What was that moment like for you?
So I was looking around at the other runners and just saying, you guys have no idea what's about to happen right now, because I was already zoned in. I was ready to go. By the time he started counting, I don't even know that I remember him counting because I was already so dialed in and so amped up. And I think what was going through my mind was, don't run a race like you've ever ran a race before. Usually out of the gate, I was one of the front runners. I would just go out of the gate. And if you could catch me. But if you can't, you're not, because my speed was always going to be consistent throughout the race. And I just said, I can't go out fast, because going out fast was going to be those few degrees north or south that were going to lead us to a destination we weren't supposed to be at.
Right. So when, so you're in, I don't know, let's just say like mile 13. It's in the middle of the night, right? Because you said it was from 9 p.m. to 3 a.m., which was a great time. I thought it was a fantastic time to run because it was cool.
Yeah.
On that one stretch, it was kind of, there was a pretty big headwind and it got chilly on that backside, I guess it was.
Yeah.
But it was probably the best conditions. It was a clear night. There was very little humidity. You did sweat, but it wasn't that bad. So what was going through your mind? Maybe like, I don't know, 2 hours, 3 hours in for what were some moments that you had where you either became human or you were just like, man, I just love where I'm at. What was going through your mind at different parts?
Yeah. So at the very, very beginning, right, as you'll recall, you and I ran the first couple of laps together just to get myself in the right cadence, right? We had to maintain a certain speed, and we had to go out there because we would burn out if we went out way too fast. And so I think having you out there to be sort of my governor to decide, but the first few things that were going through my mind were when the peloton of runners went out, I had to fight all of the urges to go out with them.
Yeah.
And they were, maybe they were already on the back stretch while we were completing the front stretch. So we were at one corner and they were almost to the starting line again.
Yeah.
Just thinking, these guys are hauling ass. I mean, and man, they're going to crush us out here. And I remember telling you at one point, keep your eye on the guy in the red shorts, because he's going to be the guy we need to be chasing after at the end.
Yeah.
And so those guys just were flying. And so mentally, I had to fight myself to not go out with those guys. Like, I want to try and win this thing. I wasn't out here to just compete. I wanted to win the entire thing.
Right.
And I felt like I was ready to do that.
Yeah.
And so that was what was going through my mind initially was, okay, trust your training, trust the process, let the race come to you. Don't go to the race. Don't invite a disaster by going out with these guys. Like,
right.
Clearly they are either going to set a world record out here or they're going to burn out. Like, there was no in between on how those guys went out at the
beginning. We had a plan. I mean, we had a plan on how fast you were going to run at certain points in the race based on how many miles we knew you needed to complete in order to win the race. Yeah. So it wasn't like we just ran out and we were just like, I don't know. We were like, no, you need to do 10-minute miles for this amount of time, 9:45s for this. Exactly. I mean, it was pretty written out how we were going to do it, what we were going to do. It wasn't just throwing spaghetti on the wall and going, oh, well, hopefully we'll get it. No, it was pretty, there were paces that we needed to keep. And so that was, and I saw it because even, just pacing you, I'm looking at them and I'm like, man, let me just go grab those guys. What are they doing? But what was happening was you were steady and consistent, and they would run fast, walk, run fast, and walk. That was what they decided to do. So it was kind of like, that's if you're only watching them run fast past you, you're not realizing on the other side of the lap or the other one, they're walking. And you may not ever catch them because they might be behind you when they start walking, or, you're never seeing them, but you're only seeing them pass you. And that messes with your mental because you're like, I don't know if I'm doing this, but you got to stay in your zone. You got to stay in your lane. You got to move what you do and know that, stick to the plan. That was the key. Yeah. So when, they talk about this in marathons around mile 20, 21, 22, where you start to have this doubt, you start to have this fear, am I going to be able to complete this? And you think 22, and you're like, man, you only got 4 miles left to go. Was there a moment or a time where it started getting really hard? You were just like, oh my gosh, because that everybody hits that wall, and then it's in that moment that defines you. You either quit or you keep going.
Yeah. And there was one discernible moment. So again, right, just to paint the picture, you're out here with these runners and you're running with a headlamp, but you can't see anything. Like I felt like I couldn't see 5 inches in front of my face. There was no lights.
Yeah. Yeah, it was pitch black.
It was you, a headlamp, and your desire to want to run this thing is really all you had, right? And you couldn't tell which runners were where in the race. I mean, there was a leaderboard, and there was, you would run past it and it would give you your times. But other than that, you had no idea. Like, you're basically floating out in the middle of this darkness. And I remember looking down at my watch, and I was maybe 4 hours and 50 minutes into this race. Already like a great accomplishment. We've completed the marathon, right? We are through the distance. We are now ultra runners. Now it's all about who's going to finish where in this race. And I remember thinking, oh my gosh, I've still got an hour and 20 minutes of running, and I've been running for 4 hours already, 5 hours already. How in the world am I going to get through the end of this race and your body is just, Nathan, it is screaming at me.
Yeah.
Like, stop running. Yeah. Like, don't do this. Like, you're going to hurt yourself. You're not going to be able to walk again. Like, body, feet, hair, my hair hurt. Everything hurt. But I just said to myself, I didn't come out here to quit. I didn't train for 242 days to go out here and just not finish.
Yeah.
It just was, to me, was an unacceptable thing. To quit would have been completely unacceptable to me. And even though I was in a world of pain, and I think I even told you, like, my hips hurting, my back at that point had started hurting. And it was like, I just got to get refocused on why I'm out here. Right. And the why was to do something impossible.
Right.
And so I had to know, like, it was going to hurt. And I had hurt during training runs, right? I had ran 30, I'd ran 33. I knew how it felt, right? But it's you just don't know how you're going to feel until you're there.
Right.
And in that moment, I was like, man, how am I going to do this? And I remember you and I would run a lap together, and you actually got me back on pace at one point. Like my pace had started slipping, and you ran with me, and then we got back on pace. But yeah, there were times for sure, certainly 5 hours into this thing.
Yeah.
There's no other runners. There were no other runners running.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah, there was only one or two people out there at that point. I think a lot of people, I don't know what happened to them. I don't know where they went. So they took a nap
or something.
Took a nap.
Yeah, I didn't know where anyone was. Like I literally was the only guy out here still running.
Right. Yeah. So when when the time is coming up, and you ran across the finish line for the last time, what was that like?
It was every bit of what it should have felt like. All the pain in the world disappeared. It was like I was in this moment of just pure relief, almost like, wow, I just did this. And really, I was so tired that at that point I was like, how in the world, but nothing to me in my life at that moment mattered anymore. I was like, I just did something impossible. Like I am an ultra marathon runner.
Yeah.
And like, no one can ever take that away from me.
Yeah. And what's really cool is you placed fifth, and you were with guys that had won races before. And I think you beat one of them.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm talking, they won ultra marathons and you beat them. That was fucking fantastic. Cause I was like, I think we accomplished what we needed to accomplish during this race.
Yeah.
I was excited. And then, what we talked about this, I think we were texting last night. We were talking about this. What is the savior? What is the thing that curbs a bad attitude, makes you feel better about yourself? What was the thing? It was what time when you were done, what did I tell you? What did I tell you to do? Because you wanted to go to bed. You were like, get my shit in my car. I'm going back to the hotel. I will talk to you tomorrow. Well, what did I tell you had to do before you went to bed?
I know what you're driving at. Yeah. At that moment, I was like, man, running's stupid. Running sucks. I really don't want to do this. But I just accomplished this thing, and I'm like kind of hobbling, sort of skipping to the car, right? On cloud nine. And you looked at me and you said, you're not done yet. You got to roll, and you're getting in an ice bath. And I thought to myself, oh God, no, please. And at that point at 3 a.m., right, it was cold outside. I mean, it was freezing. It was like,
it was cold.
And I don't know, thankfully you were out there to tell me whether or not it was cold, because I didn't know if I was just extremely dehydrated or if it was just legitimately cold. But it felt like at least a crisp fall morning, and here it is, July 4th, right? But yeah, I was freezing. I mean, at that point I had my hoodie on. I think you posted the picture of at the end of the race. Legs are just, I'm basically carrying my legs on my shoulders at this point. I'm taking my ball and going home.
Yeah.
And you told me you gotta, and my buddy Topher was out there.
Yeah.
And, he said, yeah, you got to go to the hotel room and get in an ice bath. And I just thought, this guy's insane. I think he's trying to kill me. And I remember getting into the hotel room, and Topher had brought 3 huge bags of ice.
Yeah. And
just thinking to myself, how am I going to do this? And, but again, it was one of these things where I was like, all right, I just got to trust the process, right? I've trusted this guy to this point. I'm either going to drown in this tub or not, but I can't not do it because I just knew too, right? And I think inherently you knew as well as I did that if I didn't get in that tub for the 10 minutes, there was no hope for me to be able to walk the next day.
It would have taken you over a week to recover from that run.
Yeah.
And I think you went out and ran 2 days later, right?
Yeah.
That was insane. That was insane.
Yeah. So I ran. So bear in mind, we had basically ran through 3 a.m. And so I had already gotten my run in for that day. Because if you
Yeah.
really think about it, from midnight to 3, I'd ran like 20 miles.
Yeah.
So I wasn't going to run on July 4th, but I went out and ran on July 5th. So
Yeah.
I ran legitimately about 36 hours after having completed an ultra. And I went out and actually ran fast.
I remember that
7-minute mile territory. But yeah, it made all of the difference in the world. I mean,
ice baths, man. I tell you, people don't believe me, but ice baths help with muscle fatigue, help with repair, help with a bad attitude. Ice baths are just the hidden gem that people really just don't understand. That they're the cure for what ails you.
Yeah. I will say I said some things when I was in that ice bath that I can't ever repeat ever again. I don't know if you felt like your ears were on complete fire, but I was like, I hate this shit. I mean, and I was sitting there, but again, right, just because you don't like something doesn't mean it's not good for you.
Right.
Everything that I needed, because I popped out of bed 6 hours, 7 hours later, and I could actually walk. I could actually move. I was sore, but I wasn't injured.
Right.
And I had gotten an injury during the training leading up to the race. And so I knew what it felt like to be injured, and that I was just sore.
Yeah.
That's
awesome.
It was hard.
Yeah, I remember Rebecca sent me a picture at like 4 o'clock in the morning. I was still driving home, and she sent me a picture of you foam rolling, and you had this eat shit Nathan and die look on your face. I could see it. You were just like, I hate you. I'm foam rolling, but I hate you.
I hated pretty much everyone, including my wife, who was trying to take pictures of me
to help you.
Misery foam rolling, but I at least had the t-shirt on, right, from the race.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So, all right. So it's been a month now, almost a month. What's next in the life of your ultra marathons? What are you doing next? What's the next goal?
Yeah. So I consider that right now we're kind of in the off season of the ultra training. So I've got a half marathon that I'm going to complete September 11th. I've got a Spartan that I'm going to do with a buddy of mine who really got inspired, who's now working with you.
Yep.
And so we're going to run a Spartan together in October. I'm going to run another marathon in December, and then it's going to be game on again, because we got some unfinished business out at old.
Yes, we do. Yeah, we're going to win next time. There's going to be, because now we know, it was uncharted territory for both of us. You can read, and that's one of the things, man. You can read all the books, you can hear all the stories, you can get other people's experiences, but until you actually put skin in the game and you actually get out there and do it, you don't know what to expect. And I mean, it's just that's now we know. Now we know we're going to see crazy people, and now we know what we did right, what we did wrong. We can improve upon that, and we're so close from the podium finish that there's no reason why we can't do it this time. So
yeah, like you said, right? We've already beaten ultramarathon champions, and we know exactly what we need to do to achieve the goal. And it's to me, no less than first place first place or bust.
Yeah,
still.
exactly. So, why do it? Right.
Yeah. We've got unfinished business at Old Merrill's Mile, so we'll get after them. And starting in January, we're gonna
for sure
go all the way through it.
All right. Any final closing thoughts? Anything that you like, hey, I to inspire somebody or whatever, or anything in general that you want to end with?
Yeah, absolutely. I think impossible is nothing to somebody who's got a good plan, a good team, a good vision for what you want to do. Don't let people tell you that something's impossible when they haven't done it.
Yeah.
That's the point, right? That is it. One takeaway is that you can achieve anything. I went from couch to ultra in 242 days. And if I can do that, and I'm just a guy, I'm just a CPA raising 2 kids with multiple different things going on, right? Make the time, make the commitment to yourself, and go out and achieve it. It's worth it.
Awesome. Awesome. All right, brother. Dude, this was great. I think we should probably every so often we need to get on here and talk about this because this is you're an interesting character. I mean, you're one of my craziest, most insane friends. I think that's why we get along so well because we are in our wives both think that we're crazy. But
that's high praise coming from you, man. I think you're pretty insane too.
Oh yeah. Hey, you know what? I mean, we got the insanity badge. I mean, that's just the way it is. So, all right, you guys, if you guys have any questions, any comments, drop those below. Oscar will, can answer those for you. If you guys want to get to training, you know where to find us. And you guys have a fantastic day out there. And until next time, start strong, finish stronger. Woo!